Hey guys, what's up? This is Apple Investigator here, and in this video we're going to be doing an iPad showdown. We'll be going head to head with the iPad 2 and the iPad mini to compare the specs, performance, cameras, features, and software. And in the end, I'll tell you which one comes out on top and which one you should buy if you're looking for one of the cheaper iPad models. So, why are these iPads compared to one another? Why do people say that one is very similar to the other? Well, that is simply because of the specs on the display. The iPad 2 has a 9.7-inch diagonal LED backlit display with a resolution of 1024 by 768 for 132 pixels per inch. And then we've got the iPad mini with a 7.9-inch LED backlit multi-touch display with a resolution of 1024 by 768. So on this smaller canvas, we've got a bigger pixels per inch number at 163. So the resolution on both of these iPads is actually exactly the same. Let's move down to the processors that power the performance inside these devices. iPad mini, dual-core A5 chip. iPad 2, dual-core A5 chip. So both of these have the same processing power inside. So that's something that's important to note. And then moving on to the cameras. This is what, in my opinion, makes the iPad mini the iPad of choice between these two devices. So on the front of the iPad mini, we've got an HD FaceTime 720p camera that can also take 1.2 megapixel still images. And then on the iPad 2, we've got a VGA quality FaceTime camera out the front that can take very crappy 0.3 megapixel still images. And then on the back of the mini, we've got 5 megapixel eyesight sensor with 1080p video recording. And on the iPad 2, we've got a what do we have? We got very bad 1 megapixel still images with 720p video recording. So ultimately, for cameras, it comes down to iPad mini winning in that regard. Now, let's look at some of the design aspects of both of these devices. So as I said, the iPad mini is 7.9 inches, the big iPad is 9.7 inches. But if we move on to the depth of each device, the iPad mini has a razor thin 7.2 millimeter frame. That is very thin, folks. If we move on to the iPad 2, it has a thicker 8.8 millimeter frame to it, and it's got more of a curved design on the back, like a teardrop shape. But on the iPad mini, if I pull that back up for you guys, you can see it's a more squared off, rounded design, like you see on the iPod Touch 5th gen, and a little bit like we saw on the iPod Touch first generation, actually, back when it was more squared up. Okay, let's move on to the speakers and dock connectors. So the iPad mini has the brand new Lightning dock connector on the bottom there, and this is a 9-pin adapter that replaced the 30-pin. And also beside that, you've got 2 stereo speakers, and this delivers very good sound, I must say, after testing. And that outshines the iPad 2 speaker, which is just a single cell speaker on the back, and it's just this normal speaker grill, which delivers quite a tinny sound, I must say. And then on the bottom, we've got the 30-pin standard dock connector that Apple's been sporting for the last 10 years before the upgrade to Lightning. Battery life on both devices get up to 10 hours of web using Wi-Fi, up to 9 hours of cellular data. Alright, let's move on to talk a little bit about software on both of these devices. So both devices happen to run iOS 6.0.1, which is Apple's new latest and greatest software, what they claim to be latest and greatest. In my opinion, it isn't. I've mentioned that in other videos. It's quite a downfall. Anyways, what's the unique features for the iPad mini? Well, it's simple. The iPad mini runs Siri. And does the iPad 2 run Siri? No, I can't seem to access that feature. So that's an advantage to the iPad mini. A device that happens to run Siri can can do the great things that Siri can do for you. The iPad mini also takes advantage of Apple's newest mapping system. These are the vector-based maps that you can view 3D buildings on, so this is also a great advantage to this device over the iPad 2, which does not support this feature. Finally, let's talk about the price of both devices. So, in my opinion, the iPad mini is a little bit overpriced. It's $329 for the base model, that is 16 gigabytes in black or white in the Wi-Fi configuration. And I'm thinking if Apple priced this thing at $279 or even $299, that would look a little better than $329, because once you get into the threes, that's quite a difference from the twos, if you know what I'm talking about. And then it goes up from there to $429 for the 32 and $529 for the 64, and then in the cellular and Wi-Fi version, it starts at $459 and goes up $100 per capacity upgrade. And then the iPad 2, since there's the iPad 3 and 4 now, they have dropped it back to one Wi-Fi model that is 16 gigabytes for $399, and one Wi-Fi 3G model, 16 gigabytes for $529. And, I think the iPad mini is a better device in general. You're getting a smaller screen, but the cameras are much improved, and it's just a nicer design in general than the iPad 2. If you want a full-size iPad and don't want to pay for an iPad 3, well, you're going to have to settle with the iPad 2, because that's kind of the only other option you have. But if you can afford an iPad 3 or 4, I highly recommend it. If you do want the power, well, not necessarily the power, but the functionality and features of a full-size iPad, then I don't see anything wrong with the iPad 2 if you're not concerned about camera performance. If you're looking for a good iPad that you can take to school or work, I highly suggest the iPad mini. It's great for typing on, doing work on. It's got good cameras on it. It's got a good enough processor to get the jobs done. It's got Siri, and it's running the latest and greatest features of iOS 6, although it's a disappointment. So, for the cheaper price point, I believe that the iPad mini is the winner of the iPad 2 versus mini showdown. If you guys like this video, please comment, rate, and subscribe, as it helps a lot, and I hope to catch you guys all in the next one. Thanks.